Ready to go whenever you are. He was ready. All right, welcome everyone to the May 11, 2015 Shakopee City Council workshop to talk about city administrator for the city of Shakopee. All council members are present for the meeting this evening. Just want to make a couple quick notes is that we've spent the day interviewing, going through a second interview with candidates. They have this morning met with city staff, also had meetings with department heads, took a tour of the city. Then we had a interview with each of the three candidates this afternoon, and then there was a public and business leader meet and greet time where folks could get together and talk with the candidates and give any feedback that they wanted to council members. And so we are at the point right now where we are intending and hoping to get to consensus tonight on who we'd like to have be our next city administrator. The next step in the process is city council meeting on the 19th for official designation if we get that far. And that's where we're at this point. So this evening we'll be discussing and talking about the three candidates and figuring out where our priorities are and who we'd like to work with for the future. And as well, before we get in too far into this discussion, we'll start out just by saying who our top person is from each person through here. I would, this entire process has been a unanimous process. I mean, every step of the way we've had unanimity between all five council members, and I'd love to be able to get to that tonight, understanding that might not be possible. We may need to take some more time and step back and think about it and come back again and try at a future date. But just for discussion this evening, that is the goal as we get there. So does anybody have any questions or statements they'd like to make first at all?
Can we ask the consultant if there's things that we can't be saying? Or can we just openly say whatever we want about each candidate? It's all public information.
You can.
Okay.
As I understand, everything is.
All right.
And since this is being taped and broadcast, we'd obviously like to keep things as positive as we possibly can about each candidate. It doesn't do anybody good to not do that. I mean, if we get to a point where we're in conversation where we need to talk about candidates' negatives, that's absolutely fair game. But especially at the beginning here, as long as we can talk about positives of people.
I just didn't want to break any data privacy.
No, exactly. And I'm just making sure we're all on the same
Yep.
page with those kinds of things. Any other questions for Ms. Klump? All right, so Matt, where are you at?
Well, we've got three pretty good candidates. Starting out with 31 and narrowing it down and getting to 3 is a success by itself, I would say. My top candidate is probably Mr. Reynolds.
Probably or is?
Is
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds. I guess I'll wait and see where we go from here.
All right.
Mr.
Mike?
Reynolds.
Okay. Jay?
Ms. Wilson.
Kathy?
Mr. Reynolds.
All right. I find myself in the odd position when we started this process. I was not exactly happy about Ms. Wilson being acting city administrator, and I made that known when we were talking about those discussions. But throughout the course of this process and discussions, she has been phenomenal, and she is my pick for city administrator. I think she's done a absolutely phenomenal job in taking care of everything. So we are 3-2 currently for Mr. Reynolds, 3 for Mr. Reynolds, and 2 for Ms. Wilson. And so what does everybody have to say? why did they make the choices that they made, and where convinced me that it's the right way to go.
Mr. Reynolds' background is a lot stronger than Chris's. He's got a lot more experience. He's been in a bigger city. He did explain why he's coming back this way. He wants to get back to his roots. His wife was from this area. Not exactly here, but Iowa. He's disenfranchised from the South, and his experiences down there, and didn't like it, so I think that explains all of that away. We all know by reading his bio that there were some problems in his background, not his, but where he came from, and that was all on someone else. That was not on him. So I can't fault him in any way that I can see. As far as Chris goes, I wouldn't say she's done a phenomenal job. She's done a good job. She was thrust into it. She's learned while doing what she's been doing in the last 4 months. I think there's a lot of things she could learn from Mr. Reynolds, and I think it would be a good fit for both of them. So that's my case.
Okay. Councilor Malcolm?
I'll talk about Chris first, because I will say that she has exceeded my expectations on the job that she's done in the interim. She owns her space. She's confident. She has collaboration. And she talked a lot about Shakopee being especially risk adverse, and she understands that. But what rose to the top for me with Mr. Reynolds was he talked about the anxiety of change and explained that. He talked about the high, medium, and low performers and how to keep them engaged. He talked about the levels of success that he was driven, the assimilation process. I was impressed with his knowledge of the city and how gracious he was.
Matt?
Well, what I've learned from this process is the importance on succession. And I say that because when we lost our past city administrator, if we didn't have that second string, we would have been in real trouble. I kind of like to have that second string in place. Chris's strong points are her HR ability, her IT ability, her communication portion, and management of some departments. It's probably not a fair evaluation on my behalf because she was just put into this position, well, 2 positions at once, so it's really hard to gauge that. But I do have some deeper concerns. And it just wouldn't be fair to have a one-sided discussion on it at this point. But she's got a lot of quality to add to Shakopee. I'd like to see her stay here in her role, and I think her role that she currently has, I think she has a newfound larger view of that role because of this situation she was put in, and I think it's going to help her grow into a very successful future, whether it's here or somewhere else. I also think that it's a clean start is probably a good idea. To have somebody just from the outside without any background baggage, so to speak, of past council actions and visions and goals and things just muddying the waters moving forward. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, but you can't beat his experience and his background and his education. It's pretty good. So that's why I picked Bill.
Okay. Councilor Whiting?
Well, we had 3 great candidates. I mean, it's a
Absolutely.
tough decision. Each had their own positives and some possible drawbacks that you might say. Nothing that came glaring out. The reason I picked Ms. Wilson was I felt that, right now we're looking at several positions that we need to fill. This would ease that transition. It would ease the culture change. I think she has the respect and credibility of the staff. Her responses were thoughtful and they weren't rehearsed. I thought she was very concise and always has been. When she's presented to us in the past, she's always given us great detail and ability to work with whatever the subject is with a good, very well communicated to us the ideas that are to be presented. She knows the organization. She's relied on teamwork and has shared values. I think I mentioned consistency and open to fresh ideas. I think, Mr. Reynolds had good leadership qualities and things, but not the ability to come in and just grab the ball and go on the next day. We're going to have a 3 to 4 month transitional period here where someone's just learning. And with Ms. Wilson, we can get going right away. That's exactly why I think she's the best person for the job.
And let me say just a couple things. Along with what was Jay just discussed is that among staff members, there's definitely some concern with her coming on board as the acting city administrator, just from a lot of past experiences and ways some things had been handled. And that made me very nervous about how things were going to work moving forward from December. But as we look through, as I just did, the department head reviews of from when everybody met this morning, the comments for her were a lot stronger than the comments for the other two from department heads and from staff. And I think that's a really important thing. I mean, we went through the process to do those things and to talk to staff about it. And I'm not saying that the ones for Mr. Reynolds were overwhelmingly negative, but there was a significant amount, at least as I read them, more positivity toward Ms. Wilson. And so she brought a lot of people over through the course of this last 6 months into her camp. And I believe that anybody can do, who can do as much as she did over the course of these last 5-6 months, if given the time and only one job to do, as opposed to the 2 or 3 different jobs that she's doing right now, could really take that leadership role that we want her to, and go forward with. I think that's really important to support the department heads and where what they feel is the strongest, as well as someone who's done a really great job and we know would do a great job. Mike, you had something to say?
Yeah, one of the department heads who didn't fill it out and told me that they didn't fill out a questionnaire, thought it would be better to do a clean break. Chris learned from someone else and picked up some tendencies that the majority of council were against or opposed to. And I think if she stays where she is, she can maybe relearn some new tendencies. I think Mr. Reynolds brings some fresh ideas and some fresh leadership. We won't be taking 4 or 5 months to get going. Chris will keep things going. He's going to do his thing to get up to speed. She can keep the city moving at the pace it's at.
What makes you think that she'll stick around?
Good point.
I mean, what makes you think she'll stay? Because she wasn't applying for this position to start out with. I mean, we specifically asked her that question before this process got started. She absolutely loved doing the job that she's doing as being city administrator, and I think we can all see that she very much blossomed in this role, and I'm not sure what flipped that switch, but I think we can all see that that switch definitely flipped, and for her taking over a leadership role and being able to help craft policy, and I mean, we could see from the very first meeting that we all had with her that we were going to get things done, and this is what we're going to get done. We have A, B, C, and do we all agree? Yes, no, and we move on from there. And I think that that is the way that she would work, and the way she really took the bull by the horns to say, going into the staff meeting the first time, saying, we're not going to tread water. We're not just going to sit on our hands and wait for a new city administrator to come in. We're going to continue doing the work that we've done. Was a very bold move, and she loves doing the city administrator job. And I do not believe, and I'm not saying that I've had direct conversations with her on this, but she likes doing this too much to stick around here in second place, is my opinion. So I don't think that she'll stay long. I think that Sharon will steal her and take her to another city. Because that's your job. I mean, that's the way it works. And I think that's, I would very much like to see people grow and thrive in our city and move on for places that are right, or move up for places that are right. And I think this is a very good opportunity to move up when the fit is right. Jay?
You know, I kind of go along with you on the fact that, and I mentioned it to Ms. Klump when we had our interview, and I said, well, I'd like Chris to apply just to show the initiative, but I didn't feel that she was going to be a fit for the job at the time. But as you mentioned, you know, she came in and took over some of the things that I had been working on with our past city administrator to get done, you know, and get on the agenda, and let's move on this. And you know, the township process of getting that information that we're looking at, how we grow out there, that was something that she went ahead on. We got going right away. And I'd been talking in the past with the past city administrator for years on that, and it was just, didn't happen. She took charge of the org chart reorganization and moved that ahead real well. We got it going through council. We got, I mean, it was phenomenal. The Amazon deal, she stepped up to that and helped out with those things with Samantha. I was a little bit shocked at how she really hit the ground running, and
A little bit?
totally, she totally hit the ground running. The whole point on you know, being you know, custom oriented, adaptable, interactive, communicative. I think, you know, you don't have to be that full leader. You have a whole staff you can delegate to, and we have a phenomenal staff here that are very intelligent and know exactly what they're doing. A good administrator just has to delegate that and let the team go and run with it. And she has done that, and the team has come together and worked for her, for us, for our city, and I see that continuing. I think I do worry about, you know, whether she'll stick around or whether she likes the leadership role, and we'll move on, because then we got another hole to fill. So I really think she would be the best fit.
I think that's worrying about the risk associated with actions is a poor excuse for a decision. We could use that same scenario of, we're gonna fill a infrastructure director position and a planner position, and do we lose some of our staff now if we go outside? I don't think the decision should be based on whether we lose somebody or something. We shouldn't say lose somebody. That individual has to make a conscious decision to seek that route on their own. Or do we pick the best candidate? I'm here to pick the best candidate that's in front of me. I'm not here to pick, you know, what ifs or try to make decisions for somebody else.
All I'm saying, and I believe that Chris is very much the best candidate, so I'll counter that piece. But what you had said was that she would be able to run the city while it's getting caught up, and that's what I'm saying is a false assumption.
Well, but we're treading water too.
I don't know what you mean.
Well, we can't, as a council, keep giving tasks out to be done and expect other tasks to get done. At some point, the dishwasher's full. So that's just not that's not a reality. You can't expect to hand an administrative position to her and say, oh, here you go. You still don't have an assistant. Go hire all these people, but get all these other tasks done too. You're still in the same boat. So, and you still have the, whatever happened in the last 10 years between that individual as an HR person and the various positions that you have in town, any animosities are there are gonna continue to be there. I'm looking for the clean break, new leadership, give the leadership direction, and move forward.
So can you explain to me how, when you were very upset, and I understand that, with the change that was made back in December, with the person that was very much being groomed to take that position, over the course of the next few years, by the former city administrator, I don't understand how that piece changes, is if we were so very upset about that role. So that's what I want to understand what's going on.
If I dare to, she was being groomed by someone that you thought was not capable of doing the job properly. So that tells me she's been groomed in the wrong direction. We've got a gentleman here with a background that's phenomenal. I don't use that word very often. And he could teach her so much. She could be so much better of a city administrator when she does leave. Obviously, yes, I believe she will leave. When, I don't know. I think if she leaves immediately, it's on her, because I think she could learn so much from this gentleman.
And maybe he doesn't work out and she ends up moving into that shortly anyway.
And here we are again.
You just don't know, you know.
Well, and then we're plugging two holes by doing it this way. If we put Chris in this administrator job, we gotta fill her job.
She has to fill her job.
Yeah, but I would very much caution against looking at it that way. Simply because I would, if there's somebody who is, again, what I think is the right fit for the job and the right person for the job, the remainder of the work that has to be done is inconsequential for having someone who is going to be an extraordinary city administrator, and who I think is the highest level of the three and the best fit for our community and for where we're going as a city. Sorry, you were going to say something?
I was just gonna say, but I feel the same way. I feel that Mr. Reynolds is the best fit. Chris could learn something, and it's not to negate what Chris has brought to the table thus far. It's just a matter of, in my opinion, who rises to the top highest. And all of us are gonna see that as different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's,
So in trying to get to a supermajority type vote, that's what I'm trying to get you guys to convince me as to. I mean, if we just want to do this as a 3-2, then that's fine. But I would much rather go to, if I were coming in as a city administrator, I would want to, A, not have a 3-2 vote, and B, not have the mayor be in the dissent side. But I'm not saying I can't be convinced, I just haven't heard anything yet that,
well,
puts me there.
I'll go to the scenario we gave. In my opinion, Mr. Reynolds was more complete background, where the others were task-oriented. And I would rather have seen more detail and less task about how to get there.
okay?
Because I think we're all concerned about where the change is. The community is concerned about the changes. And I think Mr. Reynolds can explain that change better.
He admitted, when he was over in Wisconsin at the two different counties, that he made some mistakes. He went to the org chart that we're gonna use, and he pushed it too quick. So he's got that experience on how not to do something, how to do it properly, how to adjust with it. That alone, if we're gonna go to that org chart, is one that sells it for me. And going back to last week when we were sitting down having a long conversation about numerous things, and this came up, I thought your only question was, why did he want to come back here? Why did he want to go from Florida, beautiful weather, and bigger city, and why did he want to come here? I thought he answered that perfectly.
I don't.
You don't believe in his value system with where he was brought up and?
No, that's not. No, that's not the issue whatsoever. But I'd rather stick with positive sides for now,
Okay.
if that's okay.
No, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just thought that was
No.
your only question, and I thought he nailed it.
That was part of my only question.
Okay.
So,
His, what caught my attention, one of his lines that he used that caught my attention, that really displays his communication ability is, we're not asking for a donation from the citizens, we're taking their money. So we hold our standard higher to explain why we need their money and how we're gonna spend it, okay? So he gets the importance of that communication. And that's key, that's very important. I would classify that probably as the most important part of that position. Because if you can't tell people why you're doing something and how it's gonna benefit them, you lost them. So that tells me that he's, well, his background tells you that he's able to communicate. Obviously, the guy can work under the heat of battle, no pun intended, but.
Why do you say that?
What's that?
Why is it obvious to you?
Well, I don't think you're successful.
That's one of my concerns,
I don't think you're
actually.
successful in the situations that he's been in according to his background information. We're talking about a third world foreign country hostile situation and running these things. I don't think the heat of the battle can get any harder. So I don't see that as an issue at all, and I really believe that the communication piece is key. And I don't want to get into the negatives, but if we have to get to that point, I'm more than happy to explain more in detail why this candidate is above the other.
Well, let me throw it back to you then, because we've put a lot of pressure on Chris.
Mhm.
And you could say we threw her into the heat of several battles.
Yep.
And surprisingly to me, shouldn't have been a surprise, but I mean, probably a bad choice of word, but she handled it. She brought us forward, and when we've had some contentious issues, and moved us along. And I see that she knows the dynamics of the council here, even, not to mention the staff, that somebody else will have to be indoctrinated or brought up to speed on different things, and I think that's where we're going to gain a lot of traction here. Not to mention the relationship she's built within the county, the different administrators in the county and other counties in the area, and the whole other issue that hasn't been brought up here is there's Minnesota ties here too. I mean, Mr. Reynolds has not worked. He's probably worked with committees like the Met Council, but doesn't understand, what's going on with the Met Council and aspects of the water issues and different things that they're pushing for, the comp plan that we're going to have to be going into. Those relationships and knowing who to call in this area can really save us. I think that's going to be a big part of why I think this is the best choice.
Our relationship between our existing acting city administrator and Scott County probably isn't as good as it could be.
No, but
I didn't want to get into the negatives, but you're kind of pushing the issue. And do you want a specific of why that is?
does anybody with the city here have a good relationship? I mean, we've kind of had that. We're the biggest city in the county. I think those growing pains are going to be in any kind of county, big city.
You get a fresh start from somebody new.
Yeah.
And as far as the Met Council, I don't think there's anybody that can tell you what the Met Council's,
Well,
where they're going or what they're doing. Met Council can't even answer that question. So, I respect your position, but it's not holding water in my cup.
Mike?
If you go back to Mr. Reynolds' previous position with Pensacola, the reason he got in trouble was he was trying to protect staff from an assistant to the mayor. And the assistant was causing all kinds of trouble with staff, doing very bad things. In fact, as we read in their bio, the mayor and his former assistant are under federal indictment. So he stood up to those two for his staff. Now that tells me a lot. His job got taken away because he stood up for staff. That's what I want. I want somebody who's going to stand up for staff, not for anything else. Now, if he's got to stand up to us because we're doing something wrong with staff, he should do that. And we need somebody to correct us when we need correcting and correct somebody else when they need correcting.
I guess, so this afternoon, we were going through the second round interviews. Of the three candidates, so we put the scenario together. They didn't very specifically that said, explain your position in 10 minutes, right? So we had 10 minutes for this scenario. And I'm not one to be accused of being a rule follower all the time. I understand that piece.
I was looking at the clock.
Yeah, but if it's a 10-minute presentation, I want someone who's going to be able to speak and communicate their message concisely, and is that what I'm trying to say?
Clearly and concisely.
Clearly and concisely, yes. And I thought that as great as Mr. Reynolds is, he talked around a lot of things and did not get to his point nearly as clearly as I would want him to. And I was surprised that was also what came up a lot in the department head feedback, as well as that he didn't answer the questions and missed the importance of filling different things, not great passion for Shakopee. And I was surprised to see that echoing what I had noticed during that, and the only one that came anywhere close to fitting the bill of what was requested in the scenario. And not that this is a litmus test or anything for exactly the way it should go. But they were given a task, do it in 10 minutes. And she was the only one that came anywhere near 10 minutes. Both the other candidates took much closer or longer to a half hour on things. And I understand that it was a big point that had to be conveyed and gotten to us. But that was a really long time to get a 10-minute scenario put together. And I was surprised that that's the way that it went. And I was actually very pleased, and it really very much buffered all the things that we've seen in Chris over the last 6 months, where communication is concise. And that's what I want, because I don't have time to have half-hour conversations when a 5-minute conversation will do. And maybe this is a horrible example, but this is what I've got to go on with regard to the interviews. So that was something that really surprised me that went that way. Mike?
It's very easy for Chris to boil it down to 10 minutes. Her history isn't that long. Mr. Reynolds' history is much longer than Chris's. And what do we want him, just to leave big holes in it?
Well, no, it wasn't the history. It was the, what are you going to do?
The instructions, too.
Yeah. It was, what are you going to do with the org chart? And that's...
And he was referring, excuse me, back to the previous positions he had and giving us a history of what he had done. You can't take the words away from him, because he needed to explain everything that was done. You know, he went up to the chart there and said, you know, our diversity is great. Mm-hmm. He loved that part. He has a passion for this city. He thinks we're perfect. Like he said, there's many city councils that would kill to be sitting in the position we're sitting.
Absolutely.
With the way the city is. I think his passion is right up there with anybody's.
Okay.
You know, sure, he doesn't reside here yet.
But
I think he answered all of our questions with candor, and when he went out to discuss with the department heads, I think he purposely left an area open. And if I was applying for this position, I wouldn't want to be talking to these department heads, making promises or give them a false impression on a position that I can't have because I haven't had direction from the council yet. So I don't know that it's a fair argument to say that these candidates should be giving specifics to department heads when they don't have specifics from their leadership. You know, how can you tell somebody what your position is on something when you don't have that direction from your elected body? You know, and we noticed in Chris's, it's understandable that they didn't, that discussion with department heads wasn't about the future, it was about today things. Because she's falling back into what's happening today, she's wearing them two hats. And that's understandable. But we don't fault her for not having the same level of discussion. So,
Mike, yeah?
I want to refer to Jeff's papers that he filled out here. You know, he said Bill was very interested in the job. He asked very good questions. He was impressed with the questions he asked. He was very up on city issues. He had great conversation. He thought he'd be a fantastic fit. He was very knowledgeable, very engaging. Time flew. Bill was impressive approach to the part of the, he approached the tour as part of the process. You know, it wasn't just a tour. So I think he's passionate about the whole thing, and that's what we need. I'm not saying Chris isn't good, but I think that we're one level up with this guy.
Okay. All right, so how badly do we want this to be more than a 3-2 vote?
are you bribing us now?
No,
Okay.
I'm not. I'm asking if I should take a break for a half hour and go think about what everybody said and then come back and regroup for a little bit and discuss it again. Or you can be done right now if we wanted a 3-2 vote. But I would rather.
I would prefer a 4 or 5-0 vote. I'll give you your half an hour if you need that to think, and hopefully you'll come to the right conclusion.
Sharon, what do you think?
What do I think? Well, I think, first of all, it is a difficult process as a council to get to a decision. I think you had 3 good candidates, and I've heard many comments about that. Sorry.
Right.
I've heard many comments about that throughout the day. And I want to remind you of that because, you know, you have the difficult decision to make, and then once you have a difficult decision made, I need to go and see what I can do to pull together an employment agreement, working with your city attorney that will be acceptable to you. So I always look at this and feel good when a council has conversation, they feel they've had good candidates. The first candidate doesn't always go through. And so as you think about this, I want you to think about first choice, but I also want you to think about where you go if anything else happens. And I just bring that up because I think that it's an important part of the selection process to recognize that. So, I mean, I will go and work whatever direction you want. I just, I guess those are
Thank you.
what I'm thinking.
And I just want to make sure that I'm very, very clear in the fact that I think that we have 3 phenomenal candidates, and I think that they all 3 could do a great job. I obviously believe that some could do better jobs than others, and I think we all have those thoughts. So yeah, I'd like to take let's go with a half-hour break. Is that okay? Is that long enough for you, Matt?
Sitting there waiting for you.
Motion to adjourn for 30 minutes.
Let's just recess for 30 minutes,
Okay, recess.
if we could. All right, so we have a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
Second, and just so everybody knows, there will be absolutely no discussion that will be taking place during these 30 minutes, just to make sure everybody at home knows that we're not going to have other conversations that we're
Oh,
all,
we'll have conversations, but it won't be about this subject.
well, all right.
Any city business at that.
Or any city business. There you go. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. We are in recess for half an hour.